Okay, so good morning, everybody. We are going to be doing chapter 37 today in Tanya. The previous two chapters, actually, we've been learning about how specifically the act of a mitzvah is so important, and that the act of a mitzvah actually causes a dwelling place for Hashem, batachtonim, like the desire of Hashem to want to create a world in order to have a dwelling place in the lower realms, in the lower spheres, is achieved specifically through the act of a mitzvah. Unlike in the higher worlds, right? We know that Hashem created 4 spiritual worlds. In the higher worlds, there is less concealment of godliness, more revelation of godliness at that moment. But in this world, using our animal souls to help us, we are actually able to transform the darkness into light, which is not so in the higher worlds, the higher spiritual worlds. Now, this is all very nice and well when we are talking about us, our own individual selves. This chapter is going to actually teach us how when we do a mitzvah, this not only affects the animal soul, in other words, ourselves, but also the entire physical world, which is very, very amazing that by you doing a mitzvah, you're affecting the entire world. So how so? Obviously, the ultimate perfection of this will be when Mashiach comes. When Mashiach comes, there will be no concealment of Hashem. The entire world will know God, will know godliness, will proclaim godliness. Right now it's concealed, but when Mashiach comes, this ultimate perfection of revelation of Hashem will be complete. And it is dependent to a certain extent upon our actions now. In this current situation and reality that we find ourselves in. Unlike, by the way, we did mention last week that there was another moment in history where the entire world saw godliness, and that was at the moment of receiving the Torah by Har Sinai. However, that was not caused by our actions. That was initiated and completed by Hashem. But the revelation of godliness, which will happen when Mashiach comes, will actually be caused by our actions. We are contributing to that now. Which is why we actually say, which is one of the explanations of the phrase, schar mitzvah mitzvah, a reward of the mitzvah is connection and also revelation of Hashem when Mashiach comes, etc. So how does this work actually, right? How are we affecting the world? So all mundane objects which we use to do mitzvahs, right? Because prohibited objects we are not allowed to use to do mitzvahs, but mundane objects which don't inherently have holiness, but are just objects, right? They derive their energy from klipas noiga. So a thing could derive their energy from kedusha. Something could derive its energy from klipa, total klipa. And then we have the middle category, which is klipas noiga, and all the mundane objects which we use to do mitzvahs derive their energy from klipas noiga. And remember that klipas noiga is the level which is neutral, but not only neutral, it is transformable, if that is a word. So in other words, if you use the mundane object to sin, the mundane object gets connected to complete impurity, complete klipa. And on the other hand, if you use the mundane object to do a mitzvah, which we will discuss, it then connects to godliness and holiness. So all of these mundane objects, and the Alter Rebbe gives us 3 examples, which we will momentarily discuss, all of these mundane objects derive their energy, their life force from klipas noiga. And when we use those mundane objects for a mitzvah, we elevate the energy to a kedusha status. So the Alter Rebbe gives 3 examples, and what's interesting about these examples, why specifically he gives these examples, is because there's an example from the animal, vegetable, and mineral worlds, right? We are the last world, we're the human being, which we've discussed already, us doing mitzvahs, but what about the objects, right? So for example, in the animal world, we take parchment for a Sefer Torah. We take an animal and we make parchment to use for tefillin. They're all made from the skin of kosher animals. So a kosher animal in and of itself is neutral, derives its energy from klipas noiga, but once we use it for a mitzvah, it has now elevated its status. It now derives its energy from kedusha. Another example the Alter Rebbe gives from the vegetable world, the plant world, is an esrog that we use on sukkahs, right? An esrog in and of itself, neutral. Use it for a mitzvah, it becomes kedusha as long as you are not using a forbidden fruit, a fruit that is not erla. What is a fruit that is erla? So, for example, a fruit that is in the first 3 years of being planted, we would not be able to use for the mitzvah of an esrog. So that is the animal world, the plant or vegetable world. And what about the inanimate mineral world, right? The Alter Rebbe gives the example of tzedakah, money. So money in and of itself is neutral. Obviously, if you use the money for sins, it becomes impure, derives its energy from klipa. But if you use the money to give tzedakah, especially from, well, only actually from money which is not stolen, so it's not prohibited money, the money now attains kedusha status. So what happens? These are the 3 examples that the Alter Rebbe gives. When used for a mitzvah, when these neutral objects in this physical world are used for a mitzvah, the life in them rises to a level of kedusha, to the level of no concealment. Why no concealment whatsoever? This world is the world of complete concealment, of the greatest amount of concealment. We cannot say no concealment, because if there would be no concealment, if there would be absolutely no kedusha in this world, there would be no purpose to this world. But when you do a mitzvah with these objects, they actually rise to a level of no concealment at all, because a mitzvah is the will of Hashem without dilution, without tzimtzum. And the object then becomes a dwelling place for Hashem, in addition to the animal soul that you're using to do the mitzvah. So now you've not only elevated your animal soul, you've not only made yourself a dwelling place for Hashem, but now these neutral objects, which originally came from klipas noiga, have now become dwelling places for godliness, for Hashem. Now, regarding elevating the animal soul, right? We want to elevate our animal soul. Not only objects, this is an interesting concept, but also mitzvahs which enable speech, enable the animal soul to be elevated. So, okay, we've discussed the objects in the world. The Alter Rebbe goes back now to our own individual selves. So let's say you want to elevate your animal soul by doing a mitzvah. So there are some mitzvahs that we do by speaking. Speech, when you use your power of speech to do a mitzvah, you enable the animal soul to be elevated, which is why it is important to learn Torah and daven using your lips. Many people are ignorant about that. You know, if you go into shul and, you know, people come like on days that they think they should come to shul and they don't know that they have to say the words. We have to say the words, because although the divine soul has intellect, the divine soul cannot express itself by speaking. Only the animal soul speaks. So when we want to elevate our animal soul, we speak words of Torah. We speak when we learn about mitzvahs, right? We daven by using our power of speech as well. Now, an amazing concept is that the more energy, this is actually a mind-blowing concept, the more energy one puts into saying the words of Torah and davening and tefillah, the more of your animal soul you are investing into holiness. So if you just mumble, you've put a certain amount of energy. If you really invest energy, you're taking your whole body and you're putting it into saying the words, the more energy you're investing from Kedusha into your animal soul. And guess what? Less energy of your animal soul is left over to sin. So it's almost as if when you daven, you're charging your animal soul to a level of Kedusha, right? Which is why we say, actually in the prayer of Nishmas, when we say it on Shabbos, we say, Kol atzmoisai toimarno, like all my bones are speaking to you. As far as we know, bones cannot speak. So what does that mean, bones? So first of all, here's the source for shuckling. You know, you ever seen people swaying when they daven? So that's the bones speaking to Hashem. Um, but how do the words of Torah actually and davening actually spread throughout the whole body? How does the body speak to Hashem? Through energy invested. And the Alter Rebbe also says that this is actually a skula to not forget. So the more energy you invest into your animal soul by davening and learning, the less one forgets the learning. Interesting. Okay, so just to recap, okay, when one does a mitzvah, the object with which you are doing the mitzvah, the body, the energy of the animal soul, all become a vehicle for Hashem at the time of the mitzvah, right? But there are actually things that you can use which can be transformed later into godliness, such as the energy you derive from the food you eat, which can then be used to perform mitzvahs later on, which is why it's very important to eat with the intention of serving Hashem. Now, let's look at the difference between avoiding sin and actually doing a mitzvah. How does the energy of those things work, right? So sinning, like all the things that are listed as all the 365 prohibitions in the Torah, all that is derived from klipa. So if you were to sin, you would be giving life to impurity, unholiness, right? So avoiding sin removes this klipa, right? But doesn't transform it. So those things are still like unkosher food are still, for example, in the realm of unholiness. You've avoided klipa, so you're not giving any energy, but you haven't transformed that klipa energy, right? The mitzvah remains a mitzvah. So if you were tempted to eat a cheeseburger and you didn't, so that's good. You performed the mitzvah. You didn't sin, right? But the energy of that object remains unholy. But when Mashiach comes, there will be no need for this unholy tuma, right? So how does this work? Because when Mashiach comes, we know the ruach hatuma avir min haaretz. Hashem is going to remove the spirit of impurity from the land. So how does this actually work? How is this going to happen? If these things are still very connected to tuma, how all of a sudden is it going to become that, oh no, now they're connected not to tuma, but to godliness, right? So in actual fact, it's very, very interesting. Because by us doing mitzvahs, we lessen the amount of vitality that even prohibited objects get to be alive. How does this work? Like, you could be doing a mitzvah and not realizing that you're affecting something else in the world. So how does this work? We know that klipa derives its nourishment from kedusha. Because Hashem created klipa as a means to an end, right? For us to overcome klipa, not for us to choose klipa, but for us to have free choice and to say, no, we're not going to choose klipa. So Hashem gave it a very limited life force because Hashem doesn't really like klipa. So klipa is always looking for new sources of life, right? So klipas noiga, which is that translucent klipa, which can be very easily transformed into kedusha or unholiness, will nourish actual klipa when a person sins. Because klipas noiga is like the bridge between unholiness and holiness. So when a person sins, he just drags that klipas noiga, your animal soul, because you're using your animal soul to sin, drags it into the realm of klipa, total unholiness, and gives it vitality from kedusha. But the less tuma energy we give to klipas noiga, the less actual klipa gets energy as well. It's like a domino effect, right? So when all klipas noiga is elevated, when Mashiach comes, right, we've elevated the entire world with everything in it, the other klipa will disappear because they won't have how to live. Won't have how to live. And this depends on us doing mitzvahs now, because every time you do a mitzvah, you elevate your animal soul, you give energy, holy energy, to the klipas noiga, which gets elevated, and therefore the other klipas don't have so much energy anymore, and it gets less and less and less. And by doing mitzvahs, we draw down Hashem's light onto our animal souls and the objects of the world. Each soul is able to elevate a 1/600,000th part of the world, because there are 600,000 root souls. We are more than 600,000 Jews, right? But there are 600,000 root souls. Everyone's derived from those 600,000 souls. By elevating your activities for the sake of Hashem, you are doing your part to elevate your part of your world, of the world, right? And everything can be elevated. So for example, let's say you're going to do a mitzvah and it's cold and you need a coat. That coat originated from a farmer in New Zealand who sells wool to a factory in Korea, who then sells it to China, who then sends it to Manhattan, and somehow you bought the coat, and everything in that chain of events became elevated. So we're really able to elevate the entire world by doing mitzvahs. The neshama, the Alter Rebbe says, comes down into this world with a very great descent in order to elevate the animal soul and the world. Even the neshama of a tzaddik, because our animal soul is not able to withstand such a large amount of godliness. But the Alter Rebbe then segues in the chapter discussing there is one mitzvah which achieves a very high level of transforming the klipas noiga energy, and that is the mitzvah of tzedakah. So he goes back to discussing the mitzvah of tzedakah. Because firstly, says the Alter Rebbe, tzedakah is money which you used all your energy to work for. When a person works, they use a lot of energy. So you're transforming a lot of energy. Even if you don't work, maybe you get your money from somewhere else. Inheritance, your husband's rich, your husband has a great job. I don't know, whatever it is. Someone gave you a donation. I don't know, right? Let's say you don't work. You could have spent the money for the needs of your animal soul. And it could be even permissible needs of your animal soul. But by giving tzedakah, it's almost as if you're giving your life away to Hashem, right? You're completely transforming the energy of this neutral money, which is why we say when we give tzedakah that tzedakah makareves es hageulah. Tzedakah brings the redemption close. It brings us closer more than any other mitzvah to the time when godliness will be revealed. It creates a larger dwelling place for Hashem and prepares the world for Geula. So that's one interesting thing that Alter Rebbe says. Now, what about Torah study? When we learn Torah study is also pretty interesting because, firstly, Torah study also elevates the animal soul because of the energy that you use. But we are also told Talmud Torah keneged kulam. The study of Torah is equal to doing all the other mitzvahs. How does that work? We just said that tzedakah is really a great mitzvah. Well, there are different advantages to each, but learning Torah is actually more than a mitzvah. Learning Torah, says the Alter Rebbe, is as if you're calling Hashem by his name. So not by his title, because titles are used as an honor or a compliment. So let's say you would say, doctor or whatever it is, right? You would call a person a chacham or a gibber, right? Those are all titles. A brave man, a wise man, those are all titles, but they're not intimate. So a name is the essence. There's actually a story of the Alter Rebbe and the Tzemach Tzedek when the Tzemach Tzedek, who was the Alter Rebbe's grandson, was a small boy and playing with the Alter Rebbe. I'm not sure you recall, but the Alter Rebbe actually raised the Tzemach Tzedek because his daughter, Dvor Leah, gave up his life for the Alter Rebbe, but that's a different story. But the Tzemach Tzedek was playing with the Alter Rebbe's beard, and he said, "Oh, Zayda." And the Alter Rebbe said, "That's not Zayda, that's my beard." And he was playing with his hand. He said, "No, that's not Zayda, that's my hand." And finally, the Tzemach Tzedek got off the Alter Rebbe's lap and went to play behind the Alter Rebbe, and then he said, "Zayda." And the Alter Rebbe turned around and responded because the essence of a person responds to their name. So when we study Torah, it's as if we're calling Hashem by his name. And despite all of this, despite all this wonderfully elevated characteristic of Torah study, we go back to saying, says the Alter Rebbe, Hamaisa hu ikar. The main thing is to do mitzvahs. Interesting, huh? So the purpose of being in this world is actually for the purpose of doing, which is why we interrupt Torah study to do a mitzvah. Unless there's somebody else to do that mitzvah. If somebody else can do that mitzvah, you don't have to. But if there is no one else to perform a mitzvah, you have to interrupt Torah study to do a mitzvah, even if Torah study is on a really high level, because it cannot be delegated. Now, going back to the Beinoni, who we all aspire to be, or at least to have very many Beinoni moments, cannot change the essence of his animal soul. The essence of his animal soul is from Klippas Noika. Can't change that. But he can change the world by making space for Hashem. It is for Hashem that we do the mitzvahs. Now, this is actually a fascinating discussion because when we do a mitzvah, we transform darkness into light, right? We transform this world, which is the concealment of Hashem, and we bring the world closer to the revelation of Mashiach, really, where everyone will be able to see godliness. But there are really two schools of thought, and this is so beautiful. And it's just the whole concept of Hasidus, because there are two schools of thought when it comes to doing mitzvahs. So one school of thought is that Hashem created the world for us. Because Hashem doesn't need Torah mitzvahs. Torah mitzvahs refine a person. Hashem doesn't need a world. We need a world in which we can accomplish and grow and attain greatness. And if this were the case, then the kavanah, the intention behind the mitzvah, would be very, very important, would be even greater than the mitzvah itself, because it's part of the refinement of the person. That's one school of thought. Another school of thought is that the world was created for Hashem. Hashem created the world for himself. And the neshama comes down to this world to fulfill the purpose of the creator. And therefore, we do Torah and mitzvahs, we learn Torah and perform mitzvahs to fulfill the will of Hashem. Nothing to do with us, right? And the fact that a person benefits by becoming more refined, right? People who learn Torah and do mitzvahs are more refined. The fact that we benefit is actually the reward of doing Torah mitzvahs. But it is really all for Hashem. And therefore we say, Hamaaseh hu ikar. The main thing is to do the act of the mitzvah. And which is why 1 hour of mitzvahs and good deeds in this world is greater than the reward in Olam Haba. Because in this world, it fulfills the will of Hashem. In Olam Haba, it's just a reward for you. It's a little like selfish, right? In other words, when we learn Torah, we form an intimate connection. How does this work? Like, so is Torah study not important? No. Torah study is important because when we study Torah, we form an intimate connection with Hashem, which cultivates Yiras Shamayim, awe of God, which then causes us to do more mitzvahs, which is the purpose of creation and why we are here. So there's a lot of details in this chapter. It's a long chapter, so this is a summary. I hope you enjoyed. Anyone has questions or observations?
Hannah?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
No, please, after you, Sina.
Okay, thank you. I had jotted, I mean, it's very complicated, but yet simple what you've been saying. And I've been like really trying to hang on your words, but I wrote down a few things. Now I'm not even sure what I wrote down to ask you because I was having questions all the way through. So let's see if it works out that it makes sense.
Okay.
So regarding davening or learning Torah and using your mouth to form the words, is that cumulative? Meaning, does you have a benefit because you did it the second, or it's done, it's one and done, and now you have to do it again to have the same benefit?
So it's a good question, and it's actually both, which is why we daven 3 times a day. So it's like, your cell phone on your battery on
Okay.
your cell phone needs to be recharged. So when you wake up in the morning and you say your morning blessings, you're actually recharging your animal soul with a spiritual dose. But then what happens is that we don't sit and in this bubble of holiness the whole day long. So we have to do with the world. So therefore we have to recharge. Comes mincha, and women are not obligated in Ma'ariv, obviously because we are on a very holy spiritual sphere. We don't need such recharging, but that is the concept behind it.
Okay, so that
Which
makes
is why
sense.
we have to daven every single day. Otherwise, why would we have to daven every day?
Very.
We're constantly recharging our animal soul. And the more energy we put in, the more we recharge.
So when at that moment that we've done the words and did that, and we've done our 1/600,000th of our part, it's like it's like marked off somewhere. It's like it's not one and like you did it, but now you have to do it again.
Yep, that's why we keep Shabbos every week and we daven every
Uh,
day and we give tzedakah every day.
so it's only
Do
when
you
we're
need to
fasting.
breathe every day? You need to learn Torah every day. Yeah.
Okay. So, but
The
you're
same way, by the way, that Hashem constantly creates the world.
right. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's true. So your animal soul gets elevated at the moment that you're
At the
saying words
time of the
at the
mitzvah, at the
time.
moment of the mitzvah. But it does have an effect afterwards
Okay, so
because
yes,
your
right.
animal soul, the more mitzvahs you do, the more refined your animal soul becomes, which is how we get to the stage of a Benoni. A Benoni has refined his animal soul. There's no
Uh-huh.
conflict there. The animal soul just wants to be helpful and do all the mitzvahs and not disturb him,
Okay,
right?
so meaning we're eating away a little at the
Yeah.
negative part of the Klipa Noga.
Yes.
We're like, here's the whole Klipa Noga, and now we've done we've like inched it a little bit away, and this gets a little smaller and a little smaller. So
Exactly.
so it is,
Yes.
you do have to keep doing it, but it is cumulative because
Yes. It's both. It's both.
it
Exactly.
you have to do it, but because it's a big ball, that animal, soul, so you have to keep on doing it.
I always say serving God is not linear,
Mhm.
right? Because you could daven, an hour after davening, you may be speaking Lashon Hara about somebody, or somebody did something to anger you, so you're like, um, or you were tempted to do some other thing, or to eat some ice cream, which you shouldn't be eating, or whatever it is, right? It's not linear. It's
Right.
really circular. So it's mitzvah, temptation, more charging of the animal soul, more refinement, more Torah study. It's like you're on and on. You're trying to serve Hashem the whole day.
Okay. But you did say something about the energy that we get from the food has more lasting power. More lasting power than what?
Well, it's not more lasting power. It's just that it's the energy of the food is different to, let's say, davening. You're actually because davening, let's say you're using your animal soul, right? You're using your power of speech to daven. But where's your energy coming from?
Oh,
If you
the
were
food,
weak,
the
the
food.
food, right? So
Yeah.
at the moment of davening, you're actually now at the energy, at the moment of davening, the food you maybe ate 2 hours ago or 12 hours ago or whenever you ate last, you are now elevating the energy of the food. So the energy of the food doesn't get elevated necessarily in the moment, but can also be elevated hours, days later.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense.
By the way, if a person eats non-kosher food, right, and then does a mitzvah, which is very common, right, the food does not transform to kedusha. You've done the mitzvah, but the energy is still klipa energy.
Okay.
It's only energy that comes from klipas noiga that can be transformed to kedusha, which is permissible kosher food.
Commercial, right, right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Lise.
Thank you. So two things. First of all, thank you. It's so inspiring. And I, in fact, have to create a new curriculum for Hebrew school this year. And I've just decided I'm going to call it Making It Holy and just teach the children how we make things that are neutral into holy objects. So thank you for that.
Amazing.
But my question is that you said there are two schools of thought. The world was created for us, the world was created for Hashem. So are these both acceptable thoughts in Hasidus, or do they cancel each other out? Is there a
No,
correct
so
way of
Hasidus
thinking
follows
about it?
the second school of thought.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Hasidus follows the second school of thought that Hashem created the world in order to reveal himself.
Thank you. Okay, that's what I was thinking, but
In
I
other words,
that part.
is it true? Is it true that when you do a mitzvah, you become refined? Yes. So you do get a benefit from doing the mitzvah. Is it true that when you do a mitzvah, you get merits or rewards? Yes, it is true. But even love is a selfish emotion
Mhm.
because when you love somebody, it feels good, right? So, of course, we have to love Hashem, but we also have to know that at the end of the day, we do mitzvahs not for ourselves, but for Hashem. We do mitzvahs not because of the rewards that we're getting after 120, but because we are revealing Hashem in this world and bringing this world closer to Mashiach, when that's going to be objective, realized of Hashem, right? Mission accomplished. Hashem is going to be revealed.
Okay,
So it's not that it's not true, right? It's not that it's not true. Hashem did do us a favor by choosing us to do his mitzvahs. That's very nice of him, right? It's a very big merit. Thank God, Hashem, that I'm a Jew and that I can do the mitzvahs. So yes, Hashem did do something for us. But at the end of the day, are you doing the mitzvahs for your own benefit, or are you doing it because Hashem wants you to do it?
so Hashem wants us to do it. Okay, that's what I thought, and then I got confused, and
No,
so
the reason is because if it would be only for our benefit, then we wouldn't actually have to do the mitzvahs. We would have to understand the mitzvahs. We would have to understand the intention behind the mitzvahs. We would have to learn about loving Hashem. All nice, but what difference does it make if we shake a lulav?
okay.
We've
Yeah,
already refined ourselves. We don't actually have to shake the lulav. What's shaking the lulav doing? But
right,
shaking the lulav refines your animal soul because you're using your body, refines the esrog, refines the palm branch, refines the people who cut it down and all the energy that went into it. It's a whole chain of events that affects the world.
right, right. Thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you so much.
It's a really great parak, this.
Yeah, blew my mind, this parak.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, ladies, so we will see each other next week.
Thank you,
Hopefully
Tanya.
Mashiach will be here before then.
Before Thursday.
Yes,
Or
before
Thursday.
the end of today.
Oh, right. Why should I wait till Thursday?
Yeah. Okay, have a great week.
Thank you.